Hello and welcome to episode 37 of Coffee Talk. My name is Trevor Hooth, and I, of course, am joined by Nate Kosher. Nate, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Almost all the snow is melted here in Minnesota, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
warm,
Yeah, interesting.
balmy. Yeah,
Interesting. We still have snow all over here in Illinois, but I guess that is what it is. It's that time of year. Although baseball started, so the snow can melt anytime now.
exactly. It's officially spring in that pitchers and catchers have
Mhm.
reported. Players are playing games, so that's all that matters.
Pay no mind, we're not that far removed from Miguel Cabrera's snow home run in the first game of the year for the Tigers
Oh
a few
yeah,
years ago. So I guess it technically could still snow, but I'm about done with it. I don't know about you.
same. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
But we are not here to talk about the weather. At least I hope not, because I can't do that for an hour.
No,
We
nope.
will talk about baseball, which I can come closer to doing for an hour, Nate. So I think we should jump into that. But first, you had something that you wanted to talk about.
Yes. So I had a Substack. I don't know if you're familiar with a Substack newsletter, whatnot, but I had one I started a couple years ago and was primarily the first year I used it for writing stories where I'd interview different people from within the game of baseball. Recently, switched it around, so now it is called Runs Produced. So that's runsproduced.substack.com. And Trevor, I'm going to go. I was thinking about this. Sort of came out of our discussions on Coffee Talk, but very niche uh, catcher fantasy baseball advice for catchers. The
All right.
long overlooked and often forgotten catcher position, which we've talked about, hard to forecast down the road. We don't always think about them, but I'm going to be diving into the world of catchers and providing fantasy tips and advice. And so I have two posts up now, which I took a look at this year's rankings across Fantrax, Yahoo, ESPN, and CBS, and just kind of averaged them out and showed who was higher, lower, etc. And then the even higher rankings, which was 30 to 40, um, and looked at who was there. So that was interesting because there's obviously way more ebbs and flows as the deeper you get, right? So mostly just veterans and times share type people, like Jake Rogers actually was one of them from 30 to 40. But then you get some excitement and fun, such as Dalton Rushing, Kyle Teal, Adrian Del Castillo, people like that. So, anyways, I got two posts out there. Would love Coffee Talk listeners to check it out and hopefully pick up a thing or two, because catchers are a position on your fantasy baseball team. So I thought, I'm gonna dig into that. So that's my
They,
new thing.
they are. That's true. So share the name of that again and share a place or like where can people find that, Nate?
Yes. So it's runsproduced.substack.com, but now newly in my Blue Sky profile, I have it linked in my bio, and now I'm using Blue Sky. So
Wow, we've come a
that's where you can
long
find
way.
it. I know. Progress, right?
That's interesting though. Catchers are they're so hard because there aren't that many of them, right? The offensive ceiling of catchers in general isn't as high as other positions. And if you're in a two catcher league, all of a sudden, like the catcher value doubles. I
Yes,
mean,
exactly.
it's just one of those odd positions where it can be so different depending on league rules, and it might behoove you to spend a higher pick to get one of the better ones, but also if you don't, you're still maybe getting more production. I mean, it depends on your strategy, right? So,
Right. Yeah, you
that's
can wait and see what the scraps are. You can get one of the studs, or you
yeah.
can try to get one of the younger people that might be around the corner and, hoping
Mhm.
high risk, high reward type thing.
Yeah, so really interesting. Make sure to check that out. Nate's new Substack. He is focusing on catchers as they pertain to fantasy baseball. Certainly can be very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us, Nate.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So, not the only new thing in baseball. Um, the Yankees.
Yeah. Wasn't this
After
some big
years of
news?
everybody going, "Hey, repeal it. Like, who cares? Like, let them grow beards and stuff." They're letting them
Yeah,
grow well-groomed beards, and I'm wondering what the parameters of well-groomed are.
yeah. I thought it was funny because you know there's it's made such a big deal over the years. People have talked about this. I saw someone said, I don't know what Yankees player, he said like it's we're not looking at Duck Dynasty style beards, those guys from the TV show, but
Right.
yeah, it's well groomed is probably a little subjective, but
I'm
um
picturing them with a ruler coming around before every game, just like measuring. Like they probably have height limits, like limits of how far it can come off of your face. If we're gonna do this,
supposedly
yeah.
it was driven by Devin Williams, I read. He talked to
Okay.
I don't know, team officials or something.
I have not said this out loud, but have you seen a shaved Devin Williams and Mookie Betts in the same place?
Good point.
I, I it probably don't even look that much alike, but I don't know. To me, I thought they looked a little bit of alike, honestly. Um,
It is shocking though
yeah,
when guys have signed there and then they have to shave and you're like, "Who's that?"
right. You don't recognize them,
Yeah.
so that's going to be super interesting to see what the beards look like and who grows one, who doesn't grow one, who sticks to a tradition. I mean, I know personally in Road to the Show when my player would get drafted there, I would always have a beard. So, um,
Yeah, it kind
you
of gives them an edge, I guess.
speaking of the AL East, what did you think of the Bregman signing? I don't know that we got to talk about that one.
No, I don't think we did. We were predicting it,
Hmm.
but you're right. We never talked about it. So you said Red Sox,
I
right?
did.
And you were right. Um, I thought it was a good move. The Red Sox, I think, quietly have sort of put together a nice offseason with the prospects they have coming up and adding Bregman and a few other people. But here's the thing: now it's unearthed this big controversy with Rafael Devers. Did you see that? Where he
Yeah, I mean,
he
yeah.
said, "I play third base,"
Hmm.
and then Tristan Casas basically backed him up. So I haven't seen anything the last few days, but I was like, "Oh, that sounds messy."
It sounds messy. It's probably not as messy as it sounds. I mean, that could have
Bregman
been.
took the
I
high
mean,
road. I saw. He's like, "Yeah, he's a great player," and et cetera, et cetera.
when they signed him, they came out and said he's going to play a lot of second base, and then I don't remember seeing anybody from the Red Sox saying anything. I think it was just the media asking, "Hey, what if he plays third?" And he's like, "I play third." Like I don't think it was
Yeah,
actual controversy. I think it was just. And if I'm wrong, if somebody from the Red Sox said, "Hey, will you go DH so he can play third base?" I don't know, but I mean,
yeah,
realistically, it probably would happen sometimes, right? He gets a day off and stuff, but as far as I know, the plan is for Bregman to predominantly play second base, and you have Devers at third. But then again, anything can happen. I just don't think I don't know if it's as big as it was made out to be for a couple days
yeah.
there.
I mean, it will probably die out, but I was like, "Oh, that's probably not the start they wanted." But yeah, he's in Boston, and I saw he already hit a home run.
Yeah, he's actually been hitting the ball pretty well. I think he was 3 for 3 in the game the Monday game when we record. So uh just coming off hitting well. Juan Soto's first at bat as a Met was a home run. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, one of many to come
Hmm.
for Juan Soto. Speaking of New York, maybe do you think he's regretting his decision because now he could have grown a beard with the Yankees?
Um, I
I
think
don't.
for $700 million,
You can look past
I
that.
don't know if there's much regret.
Yeah, I don't think that played into his decision, but I did think of that the other day after I heard that rule.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna jump in, Nate, because this has been something that's been on my mind
Let's
over
do
the
it.
last few days since spring training has started. Um, how much stock are you putting into spring training stats and the Statcast data, and how much stock are you putting into all of it and how you value players from a fantasy standpoint?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, before the StatCast data is available and all this, we always see guys who come out with strong starts or they have great entire spring trainings, and then you think should you take action based on that, based on what you've seen. And also we know some guys are like notorious slow starters, right? No matter what it happens in the regular season, takes them a month and a half to get ramped up. So I think it adds some factors that make it easier, but I'm not going to take much stock in it yet. Like I think we need to see more. It's so new. I'm not answering this very well. It's so new. We'd almost need to get through this spring training and like see how everything plays out and how having this additional data plays in the regular season, and who is real or not before we know. Here's what we can kind of look at as far from a fantasy perspective. But I mean, people hitting the ball hard, that takes my attention. I'll pay attention to that. But I don't know. I don't think you can buy into it too much. It's dangerous if you buy into it. I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We're going to talk about some of these guys who are hitting the ball hard and all that stuff, but I have trouble with some of the reactions that happen during spring training. Like Ellie De La Cruz on day one hits a home run from both sides of the plate, and all of a sudden people are saying he's going to have the best season ever known to mankind.
Right.
But like
Yeah.
he was hitting home runs from both sides of the plate last year, right? Like this is a thing he can do. It's not new, right? And the pitchers where everybody's like, oh, Kenta Maeda, I'll use him as an example. He was hitting 92 or averaging 92 in his first outing, and he touched 92 once last year. These are basically relief outings. I mean, I know it's early on, right? Like they should have been throwing a little bit. They've ramped up a little bit. They're not fully loose. I get that also. But these are basically relief outings where you can try to go a little bit harder, right? So your velo here isn't going to be what your starting velo band generally is. I'm not saying that people don't have, increases in their general velocity. That's some people do, right? That happens. But I don't understand. You see somebody throwing 97. Robbie Snelling, I'll use him as an example. He hit 97 in an outing recently. He didn't go over 96 last year. What's different? Right? He was a starter last year. What's so different about him hitting 97 in a shorter spurt? Like this is what happens. This is what we talk about when starters go to the bullpen and they can go max effort and their stuff takes a step forward. So I think that there is a lot of information out there, and it is so hard to know what's real and so hard to know what you want to listen to. But I just be wary, because some of these early season home runs are being hit off of guys who are not going to be major league pitchers this year.
Yeah, another very good point.
And some of these velocities are happening in shorter spurts than they're going to have when they're actually starting. Now, some people have new pitches. Some people worked and added velocity. I'm not saying they didn't, but it's really hard to parse out what is what.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, you're right. They're glorified relief outings, so they can dial it up. But I think it's more interesting to the second thing you said about when pitchers try out a new pitch. It's early on and they're tweaking some things, or they bring an entirely new pitch, and I would say that's something to pay attention to. Maybe not necessarily the statistics and the data of that pitch, but if they're trying a new pitch and they're seeing success against it, that's something to remember. But yeah, it's people get too excited. It's like the NFL draft, or you can't overreact to, it's easy to do it, but you can't overreact to the video you see, the clip of the guy launching the home run.
Well, and part of it is we're excited to just have baseball back again, right? We haven't seen new baseball. We've been watching old baseball this entire offseason. So we haven't seen new baseball in a long time. And you see new baseball, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, everything's going to be amazing.
That's another good point. Yeah.
But, like Jace Young hit a double in his first at bat. Jace Young also struck out 30% of the time last year or somewhere close to it, right? In his major league tenure. So just grain of salt with all this stuff is what I'm trying to say. But you're right. Like if you see a new pitch, Andres Munoz is debuted a changeup in a bullpen. There was a video of it somewhere, and it was a nasty changeup. Jackson Jobe has reportedly added 2 new pitches, right? Like we're going to be able to see some of this stuff, and if they become weapons, awesome. But for me, I am reluctant to change any sort of ranking or thought that I have about a player based on spring training performance as it is. That being said, when Sandy Alcantara comes out and is looking like vintage Sandy Alcantara, and then later you get the news story that he has no restrictions.
Yeah.
Straight up, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like just shoot him all the way up, right? Because you're getting full out Sandy Alcantara after his injury. That's not something we thought was going to happen, right? That changes value. But seeing Ellie De La
Agreed.
Cruz hit a home run from both sides of the plate, as awesome as it is, and as impressive as it is, because that's not an easy thing to do. That's not going to make me think higher of Ellie De La Cruz and be like, oh my gosh, he's about to have a 90 home run season. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
But like when players are doing the things they do, I understand we're excited, but I'm like, relax a little,
Yeah. I mean, it should be expected because pitchers aren't scaled up and dialed up to the
Mhm,
regular season workload. They might be facing inferior competition,
mhm.
and it's like an exhibition game. So
Right,
it's fun to watch, but for fantasy purposes, you got to be careful.
right. An exhibition game. That brings up one last point. I promise I'm not trying to just like crap on
No,
baseball at this point. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. Like I'm
no,
excited
it's
to have these games, but you're
me
saying
too.
exhibition. Every one of these players is working on something, right? Like I think back to the story that was told on the very first pitch con. Um, Derek School was talking about working on his changeup, and his changeup was just getting hit around, and he had to keep throwing his changeup because that's what he was working on that day in the minor leagues.
Hmm.
That's what this is too. Pitchers are working on stuff, hitters are working on stuff. We're seeing new stances play out, and they're working on certain aspects of their own game right now, which can cause them to do poorly, could cause them to do great in short spurts. Right? There's a whole aspect of what are we doing to prepare for the actual season in terms of approach, in terms of mechanics, in terms of um, you know, how you want to sequence your pitches, whatever it is. But there's a lot of working on stuff going on as well, which is why, again, why it's so hard for me to want to put any stock in what's happening during spring training.
Right. Yeah. I think it's more important to pay attention to another thing, injuries. You
Hmm.
mentioned Sandy coming back, but injuries and notes about, muscle pulls or strains or things like that, to me, that's most important than anything else, really. Because sometimes you can find little nuggets or
Hmm.
someone's behind schedule, ahead of schedule. Like that's what you got to stay on top of, especially as drafts are starting to happen.
Like Trevor Meagill's behind schedule right now. We don't, it's not known if he's going to be ready for opening day. So that affects the closer situation in Milwaukee. Do they give it to Abner Uribe? Does the up and comer during spring training, Craig Yoho, stand a chance? He's
Who
just,
gets those saves? Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the Yoho videos. He has a wicked changeup, just like Devin Williams. So it's, he's been a guy who's been getting a little bit of video hype lately. I've seen on X and whatnot. But
Sean Mania is another
mhm.
one I saw. He's probably gonna miss opening day. So then does that stretch out? Who gets that rotation spot? Those are the types of things to be aware of.
For those of you in super deep leagues who spent real auction money on Nick Madrigal, he goes to field the ball, hurts his shoulder, and he's going to be out for
Saw
a
that.
long time. So now I did this, by the way. This is me. I'm talking about me. You, you have to. I have to figure out another option to be my depth infielder in my 30 team league, right? So these injuries happen, and um, I think I think you're right. I think the injuries are more important than the output statistically
Hmm.
or even Statcast wise. just because things can happen. Who knows when the last time they calibrated this stuff is also, because I've
Yeah.
heard at different times. Sometimes it might be just a little bit off. So I don't know. Lots of question marks that go into it for me. And that's just something that I wanted to talk about. We spent a lot of time on it, but
No, it's interesting.
yeah, I mean, enjoy your spring baseball. Absolutely enjoy the baseball. I'm loving seeing all this, but just take all the results with a grain of salt. Don't be making any huge decisions simply based on what they are doing in spring training. That is I will die on that lead, die on that hill. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
All right, so we're going to end the first segment on a firm agreement. Appreciate it. We're going to be coming back. We'll have more Coffee Talk coming up in just a minute. Of course, Coffee Talk is a part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. Of course, I'm joined by Nate Kosher. And we spent most of the last segment talking about how you should not overreact to spring training results, videos, all this stuff. So let's overreact to some spring training results, videos, and whatnot. First round pick for the Royals, Jack Caglianone, hit a bomb,
Oh man.
a
Yes.
Statcast darling bomb. I mean, I couldn't even tell you the numbers straight offhand, but they were impressive. And this was his first home run. It was 435 feet, 115.4 exit velocity.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I saw the video, and it was one that where the sound, you know,
Mhm.
the crack of the bat, that even carried through the video. And man, Jack is a big dude. Like
He is.
he just so strong, and the power is there. But once
Mhm.
again, um, you want to say, oh, look at this guy's going to hit 50 home runs. But of course, the question is the hit tool, and don't overreact. But man, is it cool to watch,
Yeah, I mean, well,
right?
he's been a guy who's been on I mean, at least my radar and the prospectors' radar for a long time because he was a two-way player at Florida. He pitched at Florida also, and I believe they haven't fully shut the door. He's probably a hitter though. He has the massive power. You mentioned his hit tool concern. If he can hit enough, then he'll be somebody who's going to be a really good fantasy first baseman. I mean, he has that elite type power. I think he's in
He
that
does.
Pete Alonso, Xavier Isaac bucket of dude's going to hit tanks, dude's going to hit the ball far, but is he going to hit enough for that to matter?
Yep, exactly. No, it was surefire home run. I saw, the stat where they say home run in X other number of ballparks.
Mm-hmm.
That one was a no doubter. It would have been a home run in all 30 MLB parks. And
I mean, I hope so.
yeah, you'd think so.
115, 435 feet. If that's not a no doubter in your park, like reevaluate
Yeah,
yourself.
you need to change something. Yeah, that's. I'm sure Royals fans are excited to see that though.
Absolutely. I mean, he was their what? I can't remember his overall pick, but he was their first round pick, and a dude that people were excited about. I want to say he was 7th a couple
I was
years
gonna
ago,
say
maybe.
he's top 10. He
Yeah.
was top 10. I
Um,
know that.
but it's good to see him showing off that power. Another monster home run that was fun. I don't know if you've seen this one. Zach Veen, have you seen the video on it?
No, I was gonna pull that up actually. I saw you
Yeah, so
drop that on here.
Zach Veen hit a tank, and then he did this insane bat flip where the bat went towards the pitcher, and then he kind of did he did the hand gesture like I like my bad, like I fully didn't mean to do that. And
Oh wow.
hearing him talk about it later, he said that he didn't mean any disrespect. Like he said he blacked out in that moment. Like he means nothing towards the other people or to the people in the other dugout, but he hit it, flipped it, and was like, oh, I'm sorry, like my bad. I didn't. He was just so pumped about the tank.
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. Good thing it didn't hit the pitcher.
Right.
It started a brawl.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Um.
Well, the home run's one
Oh,
thing with
that's
him. Did you see he debuted purple hair and then the next day had blonde hair again?
no, I did not.
I
Oh,
don't know if
that's
it's for
funny.
sure or not, but I've heard. I mean, the the internet is saying that the Rockies made him change it. I don't know how true that is, but interesting. Yeah, he had purple hair and then came back and didn't have purple hair.
Speaking of the Rockies, I saw something kind of humorous. Chris Bryant, it was like his first appearance in spring training, and he got beaned.
In the hand, right?
Yeah, like what are you guys doing? Come on, the poor
Yeah.
Rockies.
Oh, poor Chris Bryant. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been an awful contract just because he hasn't played. I don't think he's hit a home run. He went to Coors Field and has not hit a home run. I'm pretty sure that's still a true stat. I know it was at one point.
yeah.
Um,
Things haven't worked out for him, but maybe it'll turn around.
so you want to talk about other prospects that are going to be good that will matter for Zach Veen might, right? Zach Veen's on the 40-man roster. That's
Yeah,
one of the reasons to bring him up. He's another former first-round pick, and he's had his ups and downs and supposed to have this prodigious power. But another outfield prospect who may matter and is having a good spring so far is Kevin Alcantara in Chicago. They call him the Jaguar. I am a huge fan, but have you? I mean, I know you've seen this, but like, do you have any thoughts here about the Jaguar?
yeah. I had him for a while in my dynasty league, and I think I actually traded him last season. But I saw he was off to a nice start, and really smooth, good athlete. But based on what I was reading, is he'd probably be, he wouldn't be necessarily starting full time, and maybe in a platoon with Crow Armstrong, offset righty lefty, but someone who they have high hopes for, and I saw the story about him that the Cubs would like him to emerge, and he actually did get called up at the end of last year. I don't know if you remember that, but he didn't do much. But I mean, there's speed and power there. If he can make the opening day roster, that's someone to keep an eye on for sure. Even in redraft leagues, I would say is if he cracks the roster, he's worth the late round pick.
Right. And the question is, where do you put him? Because you have PCA,
That's the problem. Yeah.
you have Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, right? Those are generally your outfield / maybe DH. So what do you do with Alcantara? Like, you don't want him to not get regular at bats, so you probably want him in AAA. That means maybe Canario is a bench outfielder as well. But either way, you mentioned he's power, he's speed, he is so much fun, and he is a very good defender. So you can put him in any of the outfield spots and probably feel comfortable between him and PCA. You're going to have a pretty good defensive outfield there in Chicago one day. But I'm huge fan. He's another one who just does special things on a baseball field. And is he going to hit enough? That's the big question. He has the hit tool concerns, but the fantasy output of power and speed is just so potentially high if he can prove he's hitting enough. And I think one of the things he's done this spring, if I've noticed correctly, is that he's jumping on pitchers more. He's not waiting in counts. He's trying to be more aggressive, which is, again, that could be something they're trying out. That could be, who knows what it is, but it's working. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. But again, he could have the best spring ever, and there may just not be a spot for him. They're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, they will.
I don't know if this was in the article or not. Do you know the trade he came over in and what team he was on before the Cubs?
No, I do not.
Yankees. He was in the rookie level for the Yankees when he was traded, and it was the Anthony Rizzo trade.
Rizzo, another ex-Cub that hasn't quite had the success with the new team.
Yeah. So it's just,
is Rizzo still floating out there?
I don't think he's signed anywhere.
I don't think he is either. He had that weird concussion or whatever happened. Something weird happened to him last season, and I'm pretty sure he's a free agent still.
Who else, Nate? Who else has caught your eye here this spring training thus far?
Well, I saw This I was gonna ask you if you've heard of this guy. His nickname is Big Sugar. Zach Maxwell. It's a Reds. He's a Reds relief pitcher,
Pitched at
and
Georgia Tech back in the day.
he's a huge dude.
Huge.
Huge dude, and he's got some nasty, just electric stuff, and been showing that off. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's going to make any sort of actual impact. And with him, it's control and command. But yeah, he struck out the side and touched almost. Well, he did go over 100 miles an hour, 101 miles an hour, average 99.8. And so if you haven't ever seen that guy, you should check out Big Sugar, and love the nickname.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the
Big
second best
guy.
nickname in spring training this year, behind Garcia. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his first name, but Garcia for the Red Sox just got added to the 40-man roster. They call him the password because his first name is spelled with just far too many letters that don't go together. Like I said, I don't really want to attempt to
That's funny.
pronounce, out of respect. I don't want to pronounce the name and get it wrong. But I will look it up and spell it for you potentially.
Yeah. While you're doing that, the last thing on Maxwell, if you ever try to remember him or what he would be worth, he's a reliever. He's not
Mhm.
a starting pitcher. He's big, powerful stuff. Definitely not a starting pitcher. Probably going to end up a reliever, maybe a closer. If everything breaks correctly, he'd be a good closer someday.
Loud stuff potentially helps you in saves holds leagues. Maybe as soon as he comes up, because again, his stuff is really good.
Yes.
Has been again. I am very confident it was Georgia Tech, but I could be wrong about that. I think that's where he went to college. Garcia's first name Jhostynxon.
Oh, okay. I did see that because I was gonna ask if it's a guy who has the X in his name because I didn't know how to
Mm-hmm.
pronounce. I also did not know how to pronounce
His
that. So
nickname is the password.
that's pretty funny.
I wouldn't guess it. And he got added to the Red Sox 40-man roster, so he's there. I mean, he might just be outfield depth at this point, but he had a really good year last year. And if they need some outfield depth, they may turn to him. So that's interesting. Now they might probably turn to him after they turn to Roman Anthony,
Right.
but
Yeah.
and then Christian Campbell if they really
And
need an
Campbell.
outfielder that bad. And yeah, so but he's there, right? The being on the 40-man is not nothing. Teams will give those players a chance if they assume they're ready because they don't have to make a move. They don't have to lose somebody off the roster when they need more help or more, they need some depth. They will look to those guys on
Yeah.
the 40-man. So even if they add them to the 40-man just so they protect them from the Rule 5 draft, if something happens, they may as well just give them a shot because they're already on the 40-man. So, I mean, it's not everything, but it's not nothing.
Yeah. They like that player enough to keep him around. Maybe so someone else doesn't get him, or they see something in the player for sure.
Absolutely. I see also, I have not seen how he's been doing, but Samuel Basallo has been having a good spring.
Yes. Speaking of catchers, probably the top dynasty catcher prospect, Samuel Basallo for the Orioles. Once again, kind of in the boat of too many good players and not enough spots with the Orioles. But yeah, he he started and caught 5 innings, had a couple of hits in his first start over the weekend. And he talked about how he's feeling confident. We didn't talk about this. He challenged the ball call, and it got overturned to a strike with the testing out the automatic balls and strike system. So he was successful there, but they were saying everyone's saying good things about him. Basically, Orioles manager also agrees. Like the kid looks great. He's got everything. But they still expect he will sign, or he'll start the season at AAA. But I think that either between him and Adley, the options of DHing, catching, and first base, he might end up not a catcher.
He might,
in
right.
the long run. There's that potential, but he's a really good baseball player.
Yeah, it's hard to say bad things about him. He is a gifted hitter. He's still very young. I think 21 entering this year. So he's still super young. He's performed at every level. He hits the baseball hard. Okay, he's a very, very gifted hitter. But as you mentioned, he's a catcher, and he plays for the Orioles. And another player with that description is Adley Rutschman. So Adley is probably the long-term catcher is what I would assume. Okay, so then you think maybe Basallo can play first base. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Okay, because you have Gunnar Henderson's not going to move off shortstop, obviously. As of right now, you have no reason to move Jordan Westberg off third base. Jackson Holliday is going to be in contention for second. And this is just thinking long term. This isn't including the fact that they have Ramon Urias and Jorge Mateo and all these players who they're still planning on being on the roster. Okay, so you have all these depth, all these infielders who are probably your bench guys or your utility guys, whatever. But then you have to find space for Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg, Jackson Holliday. Kobe Mayo is going to have to debut at some point. Samuel Basallo now enters this conversation. So somebody's maybe has to move to the outfield, or you're just going to have to rotate these guys through. And again, this doesn't include the fact that you have those other veteran players that you're planning on having in your locker room. So, it's just, where does he go? There's only so many positions. Even if you want to put him at, I guess maybe you put him at DH, right? And then Mayo plays first. I
mean, he's not going to beat out Adley as a starting catcher. We know that.
Right.
But he's good enough. The Orioles, he's probably going to force their hand to be playing somewhere. But usually you don't call up a guy to just plug him in as a DH when he's 20 years old either. So once again, the Orioles with the embarrassment of riches and all these good.
Well, in the hitting,
prospects.
they still need pitching, right? Like trade someone for a pitcher.
Yeah, they might have to do that.
I am just saying. Here's my other thing with Samuel Basallo. Okay, he is a phenomenal hitter, and I am not taking anything away from him. But right now, we are judging his ability to hit and his, judging his value as ability to hit as a catcher. Okay, if he winds up as a first baseman and he settles into that 20 home run range,
good point.
That's not bad by any means. Okay, his walk rate last year was 8%. Okay, but his value may change. I'm saying the same thing about Colt Keith actually too. So I just want to double up on my points here, right? But when a hitter goes to first base, I feel like you have to put them in the first base bucket. And so what does their offense look like compared to the other first baseman? Because Colt Keith, you're excited about for his numbers and his potential power output as a second baseman. Basallo, you're excited about his numbers and his potential power output as a catcher. What do those look like at first base? Now, Basallo, I mean, I'm just gonna throw this out there. He'll be fine. I think his value will be fine. He'll have enough power.
He'll hit for average.
Right?
Yeah.
This is just a point that I'm making just to make a point, right? Just to bring a thought to people's mind. Okay. Basallo will be fine value-wise. I wouldn't worry about it. But it's something to think about when you hear somebody's moving to first base, because how you value them from a fantasy standpoint is going to change based on, are they a catcher? Are they a shortstop? Are they a first baseman?
It's the Joe Mauer conundrum. Because, which I was surprised he's made first ballot Hall of Fame. That's a whole nother discussion. But once he was moved away from catcher, he was all about getting on base and hitting. But for fantasy, unless you're in an on base league, he wasn't even worth having because he hit so few home runs, and that there's so little power. So yeah, if someone moves away from catcher, usually they're devalued. And you're talking about Colt Keith. He's probably not going to hit for as high of average as Basallo, right? And potentially, maybe, I guess. But
Probably not. I mean, yeah.
yeah, the first baseman, it's traditionally your power output position, and
Mhm.
so then you have to look at how does that balance out?
So yeah, you're talking about is he hitting for a high enough average? I mean, Pete Alonso's one of the best
True.
fantasy first basemen, and he hits 210.
Yeah, you'd have to make that up in home runs.
Right, exactly, right.
That's
So,
the
and
problem.
again, Basallo will be fine, right? That's don't walk away from this saying, "Oh, Basallo's not going to be good." Basallo will be fine, stats wise, playing first base if that's where he's eligible, and that's only where he's eligible, right? That's whatever.
Yeah.
Keith this year, if he's going to be eligible at second and first, that's going to be super interesting. Basallo, if he's eligible at catcher and first, that'll be super interesting. But long run, if they don't get the 10 games at a second position and they are just a first baseman heading into 2026, that's when the conversation about them changes.
Yeah, Keith will be interesting because I mean he was pretty solid
Mhm.
this year, but they're
Oh,
going to
I
be
am.
shuffling people around.
Yeah, I'm still collecting Colt Keith shares wherever I can.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about it at all. I guess I made a point for no reason because I like both of those players a lot. So I don't
I get your point though. Joe Mauer is the perfect example,
That's what a podcast is for. We just got to say stuff and then.
making you think. We're just making you think.
Oh my gosh! So think about it during this break. We'll be right back. Coffee Talk is brought to you by the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. We've been talking about lots of stuff. Don't overreact to spring training stats. We reacted to spring training stats and things that have happened so far. But I do notice that Nate has made a Dynasty Baseball trade. And as you know, that means we all get to judge him as is tradition. So, in
Yes,
what I want to just turn into our segment called Defend Yourself, please tell us about this trade.
that's a good. I like that. I like that. Well, Your Honor, I had the third overall pick in my. It's actually not the dynasty league I normally talk about. It's a different league, not as deep, not as many teams. But I had the third overall pick, so this is a first chance at first year draft players, international, etc. So you can see where this is going. Everyone knows Roki Sasaki is going to be the number one pick, right? So I have the number 3 pick, and I'd been trying to get the number 1 pick away from the person who had it, and I
It's hard to
sent.
do that.
It is very
I
hard to do
tried a
that.
while for a while, and they don't. No one wants to trade that one when you can get Roki Sasaki. I don't know why.
Yes, it was very hard going back and forth, but then he's like, he's top 20 dynasty player, kind of in a tier by himself,
Yeah.
all the stuff
Oh
that
yeah.
we've heard talked about, right?
Yep.
So I said, yeah, I get it, no worries. But then recently I got a trade proposal in. He said, this is kind of where I'd value it because he's so good. And I know, let me preface this, Trevor. I know I overpaid for this.
You have to.
I know that I overpaid, but I wanted him. So
Yeah.
we swapped our picks. My third overall pick for one, Bo Bichette, who I had acquired in the offseason, and then already had Francisco Lindor at short. That's part of it. That's important. So I didn't necessarily need him, but he came over in a trade. I don't think he's going to hit his same kind of speed and power levels as he's not going to be as bad as last year, but he's not going to be as awesome as he was, I think, a few years ago. Bichette, that
He
is.
doesn't have the value he once does.
Right, exactly.
Or he once did, I should say.
Here's the part you're not going to like. I had to trade Jackson Jobe away in the same deal. So it's Bichette, Jobe, and number 3 to get Roki Sasaki. And it went through. It's accepted. I have the number 1 pick. I'm going to be drafting him
Who
on
are you going to
Saturday.
take?
Yeah. The
Just take
draft is
Weatherholt.
just throw everyone for a loop. The draft is on Saturday, but I know, once again, I know I overpaid, but I was like, I'm gonna get him. Like I was so excited that it's gonna happen.
I mean, look, you have to overpay to get Roki Sasaki. Let me start there. You're not going to pay market value to get the first overall pick and get Roki Sasaki, right?
Yes.
And aces, potential fantasy aces, they don't come along every day. Okay,
Exactly.
especially ones that are going to help you immediately after you draft them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here's where it falls apart for me.
Yeah.
And this is pure evaluation, right? You got the better of the two pitchers. But by every indication, you already had a potential fantasy ace.
I know.
You
Yes.
already had a unicorn who has a magical fastball and a magical breaking ball. And I am a Tigers fan. Take that with a grain of salt. So, like, understand that I am a Tigers fan. I am very excited about Jackson Jobe. I have been attempting to trade for him in every league possible, and it's just not happening. That's where it falls apart for me. It's not like you were giving up. If you're looking for potential fantasy ace that helps you in 2025, you have one. And then you gave up more to get a different one.
Yeah.
Arguably though, you got the one with the higher ceiling and the one who probably is going to be closer to a fantasy ace more immediately.
Sooner.
Right? So if you're looking for 2025, then sure. It's not, I mean, you overpaid. We know that. You have to get Roki Sasaki. I don't think it's necessarily a bad trade. I think if I were going to critique it at all, it's just it's almost sidestepping long term for a dynasty league to give away Bo Bichette, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it. The 2025 factor did play into it because I was reading up on Jobe, and they're trying to figure out where he's going to start, and will he break camp? What is he going to be, a starter, reliever? How many innings? All of that. So that did go into. I know he's awesome. There's no doubt, but that did go into my review of the trade because I thought, well, Sasaki immediately is going to help me and be a stud from day one. And from what I read, and also what this was what Nick said about Sasaki. There was the talk about his previous arm or elbow trouble, and he hadn't undergone Tommy John, right? But he thought he could have. Was that? I should have.
There was some elbow issue.
Yeah, there was some little elbow thing. But like I was reading what Nick wrote, and he said if there was that big of worry about it, it would already been taken care of, and the Dodgers wouldn't have made it such a priority. It would have already been completed. So he didn't think that's a problem. Nick Pollock knows what he's talking about when it comes to pitchers, and so I pulled the trigger on the deal. I know I overpaid, but it's fun it's like getting the unicorn on your team.
You already had the unicorn on your team.
True. I traded unicorns.
You did, and Bo Bichette. No,
and I gave up Bo
Bichette. You got to overpay to get it, right? If somebody's willing to give it up, then I mean, pull the trigger on it. I was going to give up 2 firsts and 2 players, but I mean, no one who was super amazing. But I had 3. I was going to give up 3 and 20 in a 30-team league, along with a couple players that to get it, and it fell apart. But you have to overpay, right? Like that's if Roki Sasaki is your guy, then you have to do what it takes to get him, and that's what it takes to get him, right? So if I don't know,
I wanted it to happen, and I didn't. I wasn't at the point where I'm like, oh man, this could be the. I had Lindor. I don't love Bichette, so
giving up that is fine.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
So. Giving up that is fine. I just, to me, I mean, if
it could cause a difference in 2025. Arguably, that could be what puts me over the top to win if Jobe wasn't there yet. But yes, long term, that could be. I could lose that if Bichette is okay and Jobe develops what he is expected.
So just if you want to just base, and these are just my top 600, right? There's a bunch of rankings out there. Okay, I have pitchers higher than I should. I know there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. I get that. Okay, I have Sasaki 3 for dynasty rankings. I have Jobe 4. And then if you're talking about the 3rd overall pick, you're getting either JJ Weatherholt or Nick Kurtz, depending on what way you want to go. I think either way is fine. I have Weatherholt 22 and Kurtz 27. So to get, and most people probably have Job lower, I'd imagine. Some people have Sasaki as the number one prospect for
Yeah.
fantasy, right? Like there's a whole argument to be had about who goes where, right? But basically, you're giving up Bo Bichette, an asset that you don't need on your team, which when I trade, I don't count those. If I have that, if they're just depth at that point, to me, that's free money, right? I'm playing with house money at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So Bichette is a non-factor in this deal in my mind. You did essentially was give up a shortstop that you didn't need, as well as probably a top 10 prospect and a top 30 prospect, one way or the other, to get Roki Sasaki.
To get one top
Arguably
5
top,
prospect.
probably top 1 to 3 on most rankings. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm aggressive on Job. I'm aggressive on Noah Schultz. Okay. I have Noah Schultz 5 or 6, right? It just take that with a grain of salt. These are my own rankings. But there's nothing, I don't think, wrong with the trade you made. I think the trade is fine. If you want to look at it from the other way, I could justify it the other way, right? You gave up a shortstop you didn't need and you added a pitcher for sure rather than a maybe pitcher in 2025. Okay. So
Yep.
if you look at it
Yeah.
that way, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
If you look at it from this is a dynasty league, here are the other assets, it looks like you overpaid, right? So I think it's fine. Honestly, for everything I'm saying, I think it's fine. I hate giving up Jackson Job. I don't know that I would have pulled the trigger, but that's because Jackson Job and Tigers.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured you would not have hit yes on that
I don't
one,
think it's
but
egregious. I mean, I don't think it's egregious. This is what you have to do if you want to get the first overall pick. So I don't.
yeah,
It's
it's
fine.
like I think I mentioned the NFL draft one other time before, but I'm going to mention NFL draft again. You know, when teams are like, okay, we're going to move up to number one,
Mm-hmm,
it's not a 1-to-1 like even trade, four quarters
mm-hmm,
of a dollar. It's always like we have to give you 7 picks, 3 next year to get the number one because there's the person that's the guy they want, slam dunk, and so
mm-hmm.
it's never quite going to be equal, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's probably the biggest blockbuster I pulled off of this fantasy offseason. So
yeah, and I mean both sides walk away happy, so it's not really. I don't know.
yeah,
It's fine. It is what it's fine.
I'll
It's a huge
time will
trade. It's
tell.
a very fun trade. It's a very
Yeah,
fun trade.
it's a big trade.
I mean, yeah. So, there was an article that you shared that was one dark horse to make each opening day roster. I don't know how much you've looked through it. I've looked through this earlier today and everything. I think there are some interesting names on here in terms of fantasy and what they can provide. I think some of the names are just Rule 5 guys, which is, to me, not really a dark horse. It's like, are they going to make the team or not? Because otherwise they go back to a different organization.
Yep.
But is there anybody here who you are particularly interested in for fantasy baseball in 2025?
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting, an interesting article because there's
From
a few.
MLB.com, by the way, if you want to go look
Yes,
at it, MLB.com.
yes, MLB.com. There's a few coffee talk related people who we've talked about before, and then someone I don't know if we've ever talked about that caught my eye and I'd forgotten about. So the first one is Christian Moore. I know we've talked about him. We
Mhm.
expect big things. Um,
Big power hit tool questions.
he almost made the league, a few months after graduating from high school, but they said he could potentially crack the opening day roster. So that's definitely something to monitor.
It sounds like something the Angels would do.
Yes, exactly. Oh, he was a college player, not high school.
Hmm. Yeah, he was college.
I stand corrected. But anyways, the point being, he almost made it to the bigs just in the same year
Hmm.
he was drafted. So keep an eye on him. That's someone I would draft, and if you know, he's going to be up this year no matter what. Maybe from the opening day. But the person that I was interested in and sort of had forgotten about was actually on the Red Sox, another second baseman,
I knew you were
Vaughn.
going to say this.
Yeah, Vaughn Grisham.
Hmm.
Uh, I had completely forgot about him, and I think it was 2 seasons ago for the Braves. He
Big
had that.
prospect in Atlanta.
Yeah, he had that really nice stretch
Hmm.
at once up in the majors, and he was looking that next year looking like potential stud in fantasy. And he had a bad year last year. But anyways, I had just completely forgotten about him, and it doesn't help the Red Sox position logjam. But
I
I
was gonna say,
he could,
where's he gonna play, Nate?
yeah, I know a potential post hype like really deep sleeper.
Hmm.
Um, Here it is. In 2022, in 41 games, he hit 291, 5 home runs, 18 ribbies, and 5 stolen bases. And I remember like it was a month span. He was really hot.
Hmm.
So that's the one that caught my eye, and I just wonder what you thought about him, or if you think the
Deep leagues. That's deep
yeah.
leagues, right? Because for fantasy, if I'm looking for a sleeper, I'm looking for somebody who's going to have regular opportunity. And it just I don't foresee that happening for Vaughn Grissom, um, just because of what the roster looks like for the Red Sox right now. So if he does make it as a bench role, I think absolutely he's probably a deep league guy that you want to watch, because one injury he could be the next guy up. He could be someone who gets regular at bats again. But as the roster stands right now, unless they're going to put both Bregman and Devers at third base at the same time, I just don't know where he would fit in the big picture of the lineup.
And we didn't even talk about if he's at shortstop, then you're looking at Trevor Story will probably get hurt, but then you have Marcelo Meyer, who is also expected to do big things. But Grissom, you have to love in the article it mentioned he gained like 15 pounds of
Mhm.
muscle. That's another thing in the offseason is kind of funny. Maybe you don't really need to pay attention
Best
to all
shape of
these.
his life.
Yeah, now the guys are in the best shape of their lives. But for what it's worth, I thought it
He's
was
been hitting well
interesting.
too.
Yeah.
It's not like he's not hitting. I mean, he's doing what he needs to do. It's just it's going to be hard for him to find a spot, and if he does, absolutely, I'm with you.
So, yeah,
Um,
check that out. I mean, these are deep, deep names we're talking about here, but if you
the
want to
name
get
I would like to
the
pull out.
data, yeah, go ahead.
It's not going to be unfamiliar, but Chase Meadroth with the White Sox, traded from the Red Sox actually. He is long term
Yes, I
likely a
saw that.
second baseman, but he stands out to me as like a late round flyer type because one, he'll have plenty of opportunity. Two, that opportunity should come sooner than later. But also, when I draft in fantasy baseball, redraft, anything, I forget to draft average. I am looking for
Hmm.
power. I'm looking for speed. I'm looking for on base percentage. And what Meadroth could do is be a late round average stabilizer if you're somebody who thinks like me on draft day. I have Stephen Kwan in a lot of leagues for that exact reason, because I hunt not average. And it's good to get a high hit tool guy. That's what Meadroth is. He doesn't have a whole lot of power. He's not going to steal a whole lot of bases, but he will hit for a high average. So he's somebody that if you are in an average league and you need to figure out how to get your home runs and you don't want to give up too much average, he's a guy who could stabilize that average position as long as he eventually takes over the starting spot. And potentially out of spring training, you could have Colson Montgomery at shortstop and Chase Meadroth at second base.
OBP too for him.
OBP too. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, you're right though. It's not. It's because it's not exciting or
Hmm.
glamorous like home
Also
runs or
shades of Nick Madrigal,
steals.
but
Yeah. Yes.
I'd probably be saying the same stuff about Nick Madrigal several years ago. So I get that argument also. But if you can find him late in drafts this year, I don't think it's a bad idea if you need help stabilizing average OBP.
I agree with you. And once again, we've talked about the White Sox. It's the opposite of the Red Sox and Orioles, where they got to throw someone out there to play, right?
Hmm.
So these guys will get an opportunity.
Siri, what do you call a reverse log jam?
Yes. Whatever that is. That's the White Sox.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So Once again, make sure to check out Nate's new Substack. He's focusing on fantasy baseball catchers. That is a tough position to judge. Nate will do it for you. So make sure to sign up, subscribe, right?
Yep. You got to
Subscribe to his
subscribe to it.
Substack.
Yes.
You can find it in his Blue Sky. What's the name of it one more time, Nate?
It is runs produced.
Runs Produced.
Runs
Awesome.
produced.
And right here at the end, I will shout out. I have officially started a manager position at Pitcher List. I am overseeing the Going Deep section,
Yeah. All right.
along with Jake Crumpler, actually, friend of the show.
Oh,
So he and I are
that I
both.
did not know.
Yeah, he and I are both
That's cool.
managers. He's been there for about a year at this point, and I'm just starting a few weeks ago. So want to shout out a couple of my writers putting some stuff out. Carson Picard just did a Trusted or Busted article that's out, and one of our newer writers, Kyle McCarthy, looked into Jack Sawinski and why you should maybe not give up on him. So just want to shout out my Going Deep writers. They're working hard. They're doing awesome. And hopefully we're going to have some great things coming from that section here in the future. For right now, do appreciate you guys listening. That's been episode 37. And pretty soon, Nate, we are going to be back on our weekly schedule rather than every other week. So make sure to keep an eye out for that, because we will have regular content for you in the season. Again, weekly content. That's going to be fun. For Nate Kosher, my name is Trevor Hooth. This has been another edition of Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network.